Hail, Emperor, we who are about to die salute you. This is what I will say when I march into the Colosseum to the Emperor who will decide my fate. Gladiators fought some 2,000 years ago in Rome. The Colosseum was built in the 1st century AD for the public to watch men like myself fight to the death as entertainment. Emperor Vespasian wanted a building for 50,000 spectators. At the time, it was the largest amphitheater ever built. To support the tall structure, a deep base was required. Lake Nero's Golden House was drained for the concrete foundation, 167 feet wide and 40 feet deep. The Romans invented concrete. The outer walls had to be strong to keep the building from collapsing. To help the crowd control, the Colosseum was designed with 76 different entrances. The floor of the arena was made of wooden sections over the labyrinth of passages and rooms below. The Colosseum was opened in 80 AD by Emperor Titus with 100 days of games. Excitement was built prior to the games. Colorful signs advertised the events. Heralds shouted announcements as they walked the streets. The events were free even to slaves, but people required tickets. The tickets were ivory tokens called tesserae, upon which seat, row, and section were carved. Seating was arranged by class. Both shows and food were expected to be provided by the emperor and nobles to keep poor citizens happy. Fronto, a Roman writer, wrote, "The Roman people is held together by two things above all others: its food, supplies, and its shows." The show began at dawn with orchestra music. The audience wore their finest togas to the events and brought cushions for the hard stone seats. They were protected from the sun by awnings overhead. Gladiators were trained fighters. They were usually slaves. It was possible for the fighters to be set free if they fought well. There were various types of gladiators depending on the equipment they used. The Rhaetians carried a round shield and a curved dagger. Gauls had a sword and a shield. Samnites wore full body armor and carried a rectangular shield and an axe. The heavily armed gladiators were set against Aretarius, who carried a net, a trident, and a dagger. He wore a shoulder guard for protection. While he was easy to wound, he was faster on his feet. The emperor made the final decision whether to spare a life or not. He sat in the front row. At the start of the games, the opening events were lighthearted. After the opening events, the audience was hungry for real blood. In some of the events, bulls and rhinos fought each other. The games were also timed for public executions of people found guilty of murder. The criminals would be eaten alive by wild animals. In the middle of the day, there was an intermission with a light lunch. After lunch, criminals were forced to kill each other with swords. After the gladiators' death, attendants dressed as underworld gods and dragged the bodies away and raked over the blood-stained sand so the next fight could begin. The Roman emperor needed huge numbers of animals to sustain entertainment. On opening day in 80 AD, 5,000 animals were killed in a single day. The animals they used came from countries they conquered. The Roman hunts had a negative effect on animal populations, wiping out species from certain areas. Sometimes free men became gladiators because they needed a job. Gladiators were well fed and only had to fight a few times a year, but once signed on as a gladiator, they could never leave. Gladiators were housed in barracks beside the Colosseum. They trained in a small arena amongst their barracks. Successful gladiators could win prize money and were treated like celebrities, much like modern-day athletes. The emperor was concerned the public would tire of the same show, so they created sea battle reenactments between Greek and Persians by flooding the Colosseum. When they flooded the Colosseum, the ground was covered with a waterproof canvas. Enough water was piped into the Colosseum to fit full-size warships. The sea battles were also fight-to-the-death battles. It was a very expensive show, so it was quite rare. It is hard to understand why Romans enjoyed such killings, but Romans grew up with the gladiators. They had gladiator dolls, baby bottles with pictures of the gladiators, and other household items with images of gladiators on them. The Romans saw nothing cruel or wrong in the games. They thought it was good to kill criminals and dangerous animals. It showed that crimes were punished. Gladiator fights were banned in 404 AD. Modern sports and athletes are very different from gladiators. Fight to the death is no longer permitted. Today's elite athletes are not forced to participate as gladiators were. Both honed their skills to win. The next show is about to begin. I leave you now. I will fight strong, and God willing, I will survive the fight again.
Okay, ready? Hold your toga. Ready, go. Get him.